All right. Sadly, this is not the way I wanted to introduce this whole new camera setup and stuff because I was like really excited about this. I'm currently recording this with my DSLR, and we're still working on some lighting things and things here and there, but we'll get through that. I'll talk about that in like another video where I go into future plans and things like that. I had a lot planned, and this is just a hurdle I got to get past. Appreciate anyone who's here to listen in on the story. I wrote a huge script and I have a lot to say, so it's going to take a long time. I don't want to do too much editing on this or put up titles for each section and each subsection when I hit them. But that's pretty much going to be it, so I can just get through this and we can move forward. Appreciate you listening, and I hope that as you listen, you can learn something, and we just take positives away from this and be better as people and as a community. So the first section is why I have to speak up and why it is important that I do. And there's subsections in each section. So the first subsection for this is why I have to speak up. So I need to speak up and share my story because this experience was traumatic and has affected me heavily in a negative way. I struggle socially and with friendships, and I ultimately trusted two people and cared about them fully, and they ended up treating me like I was worthless and meant nothing to them. I no longer feel safe, respected, and understood in this community because of them, and I will have a hard time forgiving them for it. They have made one of the only spaces online that I felt safe in turn into a place that just constantly reminds me of the way that they treated me. And that's a hard thing to accept. For most of my life, I have allowed people to abuse, use, and hurt me, and I would do nothing. At first, I didn't understand that I was being abused and mistreated. Then in the future, I thought it was better to just keep the peace and move on. But all this did was fill me with endless amounts of trauma, hatefulness, anger, depression, anxiety. It was all just building up inside of me. Doing nothing hurts much worse than doing something. So this time, as I've grown a lot as a person, I decided that I would not just let this go without standing up for myself, defending myself, and calling this behavior out. This is a way for me to show myself that I have grown and that I won't just let anyone mistreat me and get away with it. I will share my story, and I am sharing for me because I know it is the right thing to do and the best way for me to move forward. Next section is why is it important to speak up? Ableism and abuse are taboo subjects. People don't like to think, address, or talk about issues relating to them. Many victims of abuse are attacked for coming forward and disturbing the peace. They are questioned and made to feel like they are making it up or that it is all just for attention. Many do not take the pain and trauma caused seriously. We are often judged for our behaviors when we are acting the way we are because of the abuse we experienced. There is not a lot of understanding and acceptance for abuse victims in communities, and I need to speak up and call this out. The way this situation was handled and addressed was wrong, and I will not stay silent about it. There needs to be changes in the future, and people need to do better and be better. I can't force anything, but it is important to speak out about this. This isn't just about me. This is about any and everyone who wants to come out about abuse in these communities. This is about anyone who has felt wronged and was too afraid to come out because they are concerned about exactly this happening to them. I finally understand why it is so hard to come out about the abuse you have experienced. I have had to argue and fight for people just to understand what was happening, and I barely got to talk to most of the mods that ultimately made the decision. I felt isolated, alone, traumatized, and unsupported. No one deserves to feel this way after coming forward about something like this. People close to me see this for what it is, and I'm grateful, but I don't want any other abuse victims to think this was okay and handled well, because it is not. It is not okay and was not handled well. It is important that I speak up about this injustice, but I don't plan to take it any further than this. I hope people can just learn from this and take what I say for what it is, and keep people like me in mind in the future. We deserve better. I am autistic. I may have ADHD. I take an SSRI to help me with the trauma I've experienced in my life. I go to therapy to work on bettering myself every 2 weeks. Who I am as a person is not inherently wrong. I have grown as a person so much, so much. And the way this community handled this shows me that they decided to not stand by me during a time of need, a time where I really needed the support. I think it's really important that I share my story because this issue is bigger than just me. This next section would be probably difficult for some people, but it is called Ableism in the Jack community, before I became a more active member. Before I became an active member of the community, I lurked a lot. I have had a lot of bad experiences in other online communities, and I wanted to make sure that I was safe coming into a new one. I knew I loved Jack, and speedrunning was so fascinating to me, but that doesn't mean the community would be safe in an accepting place. I noticed a ton of ableist behavior from people in the community as I lurked initially. Zoey herself would go around chats saying autismo and using autistic as an insult. I immediately felt uncomfortable, and I was concerned about being openly autistic in the community. Sure, she would claim that she never meant anything by it, but imagine what that looks like to someone who's interested in joining your community. It's not okay. I also witnessed 3 mods in the community allowing ableist humor to go on without a care in the world. Chimforce, Six Rock, and Goofy would join VCs with other members of the community, and as I lurk in their streams, I would hear constant references of autistic being used as an insult or to show someone is less than. One experience particularly was when Goofy, I believe it was Goofy, I could be wrong, joined the group VC and started talking about someone that was autistic and was saying so many negative, ableist, and disgusting things about them. I think it was in reference to like a show about disabled people looking for love, which that show is probably ableist in its own right. But they were just making fun of the whole situation, and I felt extremely uncomfortable being there. I believe it was in Chim's stream when it happened, but I felt so uncomfortable. I had to leave the stream. I felt similarly in Six Rocks' stream because I never knew what behavior would show itself and when. Like, would this come out? Who knows when it's going to come out? Because clearly it's something that they're used to and openly do, if not without thinking about the consequences or how it affects someone else. But being the kind and compassionate person I try my hardest to be, I didn't want to judge them. I tried to look past it. I started interacting and focusing on Jack, the game I love, and getting better at speedrunning it. It was an attempt to build a relationship with them, but also to keep the kind of toxicity away if possible. I knew that the more active I became, I would have to be open about being autistic. I hoped that my presence in the community would show them what one example of an autistic person is like, and that they shouldn't be making these disgusting jokes and comments about it. I did notice the community toning down on that behavior the more active and open I was. I was proud that I could keep the peace while also making a difference. But I mention this because people within the community have been unknowingly or intentionally ableist, and they were a part of deciding how to handle this decision, as in they're in the mod team. It isn't surprising to me at all how none of the mods could see how Zoey and Kuitar were ableist towards me, but this kind of behavior was present before I became a more prominent member. I never mentioned it to keep the peace, but it deserves to be mentioned here and now. This next section is how things started with Zoey and how things got toxic. Zoey started out as a dear friend. We connected instantly from my perspective. I loved her personality, her sense of humor, and how caring she was of me. She helped me remove myself from a previous toxic relationship, and I was grateful for that. We talked daily and very often. We shared a lot about our personal lives and the lessons we have learned. I like Zoey because she is a thinker. She thinks, she observes, she ponders, and she had a lot to say. I love people like that. There is so much to talk about with someone who loves to think. I would never say that Zoey wasn't a person I admired, because I would be lying. The good in her I cared about deeply. My issue with her was that she could turn into an abusive person, sometimes out of nowhere, and I was the main victim of it. She could be extremely ableist and showed me how little she cared about the fact that as an autistic person, I think and understand and process the world differently. And that just isn't okay. She made me feel like I was inherently wrong. Who I was inherently wrong. Not good enough for her and a problem to be solved. Then she would say she cared, apologize, admit fault, and the cycle would repeat itself again. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to be friends so badly because I struggle to make friends that she used that against me to try and manipulate me, tear me down, and make me feel like I wasn't good enough, as I am, so that I could change to meet her standards. That side of her is what I hate, or what I don't like, or what hurts me. That side is what I wish could change. Otherwise, I really appreciated who she was as a person. What ruined our relationship was her abuse and toxicity, nothing else. She chose to not take responsibility instead of remaining friends, taking responsibility for her abusive tendencies, and getting help for herself when she clearly needed it. She was fully aware of her abusive tendencies, her toxic behaviors, and her lack of action. She just didn't care enough to do and be better. That is the truth. She couldn't handle our friendship because I was not an enabler. I didn't allow her to be abusive and get away with it. I called her out, I pointed out her mistakes and flaws, I defended myself. I stood my ground, and for that I paid a price. I didn't want her to get away with how she treated me and just run away with no consequences. But I also recognize that she is a danger to anyone like me, anyone different from her. There is nothing that will stop her from abusing and being toxic again to another vulnerable person. She knows this is true and does not care. Someone who can act like this is not safe in any community ever. I will always speak out about Zoey and her behaviors. Many people in the community know how toxic she is and has been in the past. They just haven't spoken up about it. But I refuse to allow her to get away with her behaviors. I will call them out every single time. And she knows that, which is why she did what she did. The truth is that I fell in love with Zoey. I had feelings for Zoey for a while, and especially in the beginning of our relationship. I cared about her so much that I wanted to help her. I wanted to believe that she could be a better person for herself. Me and others that have to put up with her behaviors. I thought she cared enough to do that. Obviously, the feelings were not reciprocated, and ever since that became very apparent, that is when I feel like a lot of the toxic behaviors started to show with her. She was unaware of how people would actively treat her differently because they know how toxic she is. I didn't feel right treating her differently. So she used me as the reason for her behaviors. But the reality is that I cared so much that I wanted to treat her just like everyone else. I didn't want to treat her like someone I have to walk on eggshells with or ignore when they blow up and turn toxic. I wanted her to get help. But the reality is that you can never force anyone to get help. You can't make someone change. She has to do it herself, and she chose not to. As a result, she broke my heart. I lost a friendship that could have been beautiful, and I will never feel the same in this community again. But that is life. Life isn't fair, and not everyone will care about you. I will always care about the good person that Zoey can be and could be at times. But this side of her destroyed our connection and our friendship, and she doesn't care at all. For that, I can never forgive her. But I hope that one day she gets the help she needs. I wish her the best in life. She deserves better than what she gives herself. This subsection is called Effects of Emotional Abuse and Why I Behaved the Way I Did. Considering how close I felt to Zoey, how desperately I wanted her to be my friend, and that for a short period of time I developed romantic feelings for her, my behavior can easily be explained. But that doesn't mean that I didn't make mistakes or do anything wrong. I think explanations are important because they help us build understanding so we can act and do better in the future. I enabled Zoey's abuse, even though it kills me to admit, by coming back again and again and again. Many people told me that she was toxic and not someone worth being friends with, but I didn't want to give up on her. I didn't want to give up on my friend. I cared deeply about her, and I didn't want to just leave when I knew we could be friends if she cared enough to get help. I fully believed that, and I couldn't let go. I fell for her lies, manipulation, and gaslighting again and again. I was lost. I desperately wanted her to not be what everyone was telling me she was, and what I knew she really was. I was in denial. I wanted to believe that she cared. I wanted to believe that she could be better. As a result, I put myself through so much pain. I am grateful to the people who tried to help me see what she was, but I just wasn't ready to let go. I don't blame myself because no one deserves to be abused, ever. No one deserves to be treated in ableist ways. But I will learn from this. I have to take responsibility for my part in this so that I can never let this happen again, and I can be supportive of people who have ever been through something similar. This is bigger than me, and I see that now. This next section is about victim blaming. I felt like I dealt with a lot of victim blaming during this situation. People were so focused on the fact that I kept going back and kept trying to, fix our relationship, and not enough people were calling Zoey's behavior what it was: abuse. She would talk down to me as if I was dumb or less than her. She would treat me as a child and constantly degrade me. I wasn't allowed to talk about who I am as an autistic person because that was making excuses and playing the victim. Anything I did wrong was held against me, but I wouldn't hold everything she did against her. I cared about her too much. She constantly admitted that she knew her behaviors were abusive, toxic, and wrong, but then the next day she would blame me for how she treats me. She can be a manipulator, a gaslighter, and a cruel individual whenever she wanted, and I wasn't allowed to speak up against it because she didn't want me to. And if I did, I'd be seen as harassing her. She had full control, always, and what she said goes, and how I felt was an afterthought. I have never felt so worthless, unsupported, and uncared for by someone in my life. But then she would come back and show she cared and be good to me and be fun to interact with and fun to play games with. Then I would trust her all over again and fall victim to it repeatedly. I am not to blame for Zoey's behavior towards me. We did not equally harass each other. We did not both do the same things to each other. What she was doing was abuse, and I was responding to it, trying to de-escalate, calm her down, understand why she was upset, understand why she hated me so much at times. I was confused by her treatment of me, but then felt encouraged when she was good to me. I was in a dangerous and abusive cycle with her, and I couldn't escape it. Anyone who tries to equate how we treated each other simply does not understand this situation. I'm going to read the definition of victim blaming just so we all are on the same page. Victim blaming is a manipulative tactic used by abusers to convince themselves and their victims that the problems lie with the other person, not with them. The ploy is very clever and effective. Zoey engaged in this, and so have people from the mod team when investigating this. Am I perfect? Definitely not. Do I have social quirks and flaws? Yes. But did I deserve what she did in any way? No, I did not, and she knows that. She admitted that. I apologized and apologize now for the way I behaved, but anger, depression, shame, fear, and being traumatized are all normal reactions to what happened to me. Something I am working on in therapy is learning to control these intense emotions. When my emotions become overwhelming, that's usually what puts me into a meltdown. I definitely make mistakes when having them. I can be way more cruel, way more mean, and not as level-headed and collected as I usually am. But my hope is that people can understand why I was brought to these places, with the way I was being treated, and how it makes sense that I would act the way I did. but I do need to be better and have more control when people are hurting me. That is something I'll always work to improve, and I am currently doing that. This subsection is Zoey is a danger to others like me or different from her. Zoey has shown that she has a complete disregard for how her behaviors affect other people, and that she would rather not take responsibility for her behaviors than do anything to be better. Because of this, she is a danger to anyone not like her, to anyone who does not meet her standards, to anyone vulnerable, autistic, and desperate for friendships like I was. She is a danger to so many. She does not belong in any community. This was not a friendship gone bad. This was abuse and literally the lack of acceptance of who I am as an autistic person. People who cannot see this for what it is are willing to put others in danger. Everyone knows that Zoey is capable of doing this again to many others, and she has proven it by doing what she has done. She has shown toxic behaviors in the past, and she still shows them now. If your relationship stays superficial, you are good, but I wouldn't recommend getting much closer than that. That is when her true self shows, and everyone who I reached out to about her behaviors can see it for themselves. I will always warn people about her because I would never wish this on anyone else ever. I say this because I think it is wrong that Zoey is allowed to remain in this community and the community's Discord. So I will speak out about this until she gets the help she needs, because until then, she will be a danger to so many. All right, this next major section is called Kuitar's involvement and how it was downplayed by the mods. Let me just state in the beginning that Kuitar has status and power in his position. He has friends that are also mods and is well known and respected in the community to be exactly the opposite of what is displayed here. It is unfortunate, but this is the truth. Kuitar also abused mod powers by allowing Zoey into a private runner-only Discord channel just to eavesdrop on me. Zoey hasn't cared about Jack in a long time and had no interest in this channel. It is obvious why she joined the channel. It was a safe space for me to talk about the abuse she was putting me through and other personal topics. Knowing she was in there was very traumatizing for me, and I knew she would try to use anything I said in there as a valid reason to continue hurting me. The mods tried to downplay this by saying, well, Zoey is a runner, so technically Kuitar didn't do anything wrong giving her the roles. But that's a loophole. And they knew that it was. They were both aware of it, I'm sure. That doesn't make it right. They knew exactly what they were doing and the harm it would cause me. Just more proof that Kuitar was biased towards Zoey, because he would never do anything like that for me when I begged him constantly to help me understand her behaviors for months. Very toxic and disgusting behavior from a mod that knows that Zoey is being abusive towards me. Kuitar was kind to me and a friend at times. He was a good friend to me. There is a chance that at some point I can eventually forgive him for what he has done and the trauma he has caused me. Unlike Zoey, he can be level-headed, reasonable, logical, and a valuable person to have conversations with. But I do not think he handled this situation appropriately at all, and as a result, I do not think he deserves to be a mod for the community. He directly enabled Zoey's behavior and did not call it out for what it was. This is wrong. That is not the behavior of a mod. Someone who is being abused should feel like reaching out to a community mod would mean that the issue will be called out appropriately and that something will be done. But Kuitar saw how much Zoey was hurting me and told no one and did nothing. He instead thought he was objective enough to try and solve the issues between us, but then showed bias towards Zoey with the way he handled himself. I created a group chat to try and solve our issues. I invited Kuitar, Whip, Cord, my partner, Zoey, and I. That was all who was involved. Zoey at first tried to act like a decent human being. She was nice, calm, collected, and actually seemed like she was gonna address the issues that I wanted her to address. But then her true colors started to show. She would leave the group in rage countless times and insult and degrade me often. Kuitar and Whip were witnesses to all of this. Kuitar would give us both the floor to speak, But when I brought up points, they were tossed aside or seen as not helpful. But the points Zoey brought up were prioritized and seen as more necessary to address. I even tried to be fair to her and was willing to elaborate on issues she brought up, and somehow Kuitar and Zoey found a way to break down what I said and see it as disingenuous and call me out for it. They completely skipped over half of what I said just to call out how I worded a few sentences. It was so ridiculous and biased that it made me sick. Eventually, Zoey was able to control the narrative and decide what she was going to do, and that how I felt just didn't matter. She always got her way, and Kuitar enabled that every single time. I'm sure Kuitar called her out for her behaviors, but he failed in calling her behaviors out for what it was, abuse and her being ableist. Talking down to me and treating me like a child, like I am too stupid to understand her and what she was saying / doing is ableist to the core. She knew how much this hurt me and continuously did it again and again. Kuitar saw this and never called it out, not once. My thoughts were always questioned severely, but Zoey was allowed to say whatever she wanted and rarely was told to defend her points, which were obviously wrong and flawed. Kuitar allowed Zoey to feel like what she was doing was okay, and that the issues between us were just miscommunications, when it was much more than that. It was abusive and ableist. Because he never called her out properly, she would use his words to tell me it was okay to treat me how she was. Whether it was intentional or not, Kuitar enabled her abuse and never called her ableism out when he saw it firsthand. He failed as a mod and doesn't deserve to be one when this is how he would treat someone being abused by someone in the community. I don't hate him, but I got fed up with him making excuses for her and trying to pretend like I didn't understand the discussions we've had. He engaged in extreme gaslighting, trying to make me question reality and what was said and done between us. He acted in a way that is just so cruel, and I will have trouble forgiving him. Maybe one day, but for now, he was not much better than her and was more involved in this situation than the moderation team ever explained. Lessons learned and moving on. At the end of the day, the decision was made. Maybe I didn't gather enough evidence. It was hard enough looking through it, given how fresh the pain was after how Zoey and Kuitar treated me on Friday the 28th. I was also hurting finding out that Zoey was talking to my friends behind my back, saying that she didn't even care about following through with anything she said she cared about and would do, that she was only concerned about being exposed for who she was. Why be concerned if you know you are innocent? Or I hope you think long and hard about that one. I know what happened to me. I know that this decision is wrong, and that Zoey and Kuitar were both abusive and ableist towards me in many ways. Zoey obviously is responsible for most of it, but she relied on Kuitar to enable her, and he did just that. They deserve consequences, but the Jack community moderation team see otherwise. So, the least I can do is tell my side of the story and make sure that people know the truth from my perspective. I have a lot to work on as a person, but I have started building new relationships with people who do not treat me like Zoey and Kuitar have, and it has shown me that what they were doing was not caring is not what caring friends would do. I trusted them and thought they were my friends, and they were nothing of the sort. I will always continue to work on myself. This situation brought the worst out of me. I was in so much pain, and I had some of the most aggressive meltdowns I've had in years. I need to work on controlling my emotions and working through the years of trauma that make situations like these so much worse for me to deal with. With all that said, I can no longer financially support the members of the moderation team without feeling like I am directly disrespecting myself. I will no longer financially support the community as a whole. The mods messed up here, and I have a right to say that and share my story. I will always be kind and respectful towards everyone, but they do not deserve my generosity and the true unfiltered kindness that I have to offer. Not everyone deserves that side of me. Their decision basically shows me how much they care about me. I am hurt, but it is what it is. I will heal. I will continue to grow and learn from my mistakes. I will continue to go to therapy and confront my issues, trauma, and more. I am taking action, and I always have been. And that is what I will continue to do moving forward. I do want to take the time to say thank you to the people who messaged me and have shown support and told me positive and meaningful ways I've impacted your lives. When you go through a boost like this, you start to think you truly are worthless. You start to believe the things that they say about you. You all reminded me that people do value me, accept me, appreciate me, and care about me. I am not alone. I am not worthless, and I have made an impact on many people's lives. Trust me when I say you all have had a major impact on me as well. I will forever be grateful for your support and kindness during this difficult time. Although I may never support the Jack community as a whole the same way again, I will still be present in the community. I would just focus all of my kindness, generosity, and more on the individuals that I know are there for me. They will not make me go away. They will not have power over me. I will heal and move on and be stronger than I ever was. Every painful experience makes us stronger and teaches us so much about who we are, who other people truly are, and how the world around us works. Life isn't fair, but we have to make the best of it. And that is what I plan to do. I want to move on from this and stop talking and thinking about it. If anyone has anything to say to me about it, reach out to me privately. But otherwise, I would just refer everyone to this video. This is all you need to know to understand this situation. I hope I was thorough, transparent, and honest enough for you to understand my perspective and my experience. I'll always be a mental health and disability rights focused person, and this experience just made me realize how important that is. Thank you. I do want to reiterate that I know that my behavior wasn't always perfect. Dealing with Zoey and Kuitar, they've caused so many meltdowns and so many blowups from me. But I feel like for the most part, I'm really proud of myself for how calm and collected I tried to be while going through the stuff that they were doing. Like, Zoe's abuse, I tried so hard to calm her down and just stay calm and collected most of the time. A few times I did lose it, but I'm proud of myself for how strong I was and staying calm as much as I did. And with Kuitar constantly twisting things I say and manipulating me and just all that stuff, like, it was so frustrating to deal with, but for the most part I stayed pretty calm. I did have moments where I lashed out, and that's something that I really want to work on, but I'm proud of myself for how I handled myself with this, and I hope that I can learn from this, and I hope that anyone who listened to this can take something positive away from this, because we deserve better. We should be doing better for each other. We should be there for each other. We should care for each other. Something like this should not be acceptable. All right, I'm out.